I am so thrilled to be in Calgary, Canada today, and we are going to be talking to their stormwater management team about their program. In fact, that's the purpose of these Stormwater Awareness Week regional spotlights, is to look at the stormwater programs literally around the world. Calgary, Canada. We're going to go to the base of the Canadian Rockies and take a look at their program. And they have an amazing program. They've done some amazing things. So Graham and his team I'm gonna let Graham introduce them and then tell you all about their program. But our goal is that you learn a little bit about Calgary, not just their stormwater management program, but you get to see the area. You get to see what they're doing. You get a feel for the culture and what's going on in Calgary. And so we're hoping that in the next hour, you'll be wanting to go there in person and check it out. So, Graham, why don't you introduce your team and the hour is all yours.
Well, thank you very much, John. And first off, I do apologize because I'm out in beautiful little town called Invermere, British Columbia. So I'm sorry if I missed picking you up at the airport. I'd missed that message you sent me. But welcome to Calgary, everyone, and also welcome to Invermere, British Columbia. I am out here in the Rockies. I had to close my blinds. I was hoping you could all see a beautiful backdrop of the Rockies with the sun coming up this morning, but it's just kind of washed out, so I won't do it justice. And anyway, so my name's Graham, and I'm with the City of Calgary. I work in the water utility at the city, and I am my wife and I are enjoying a short weekend out here in Invermere today. But I work in a stormwater pollution prevention team. And if you caught my talk the other day, I spend quite a bit of time looking after industrial, commercial, institutional, SWIP sort of stuff, stormwater pollution prevention. And I'd really like to introduce my good friend, Corey Albers, who's on the call here. Corey, did you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Graham. I am in Calgary, and I'm a consultant to all sorts of different entities, including the City of Calgary. And I put up as a backdrop one of my projects that we designed here in Calgary, and this is one that we're going to be talking about a little bit. So I'm an expert in nature-based water treatment systems, but also an expert in advanced hydraulic engineering. And so I do some of the more difficult hydraulic engineering problems for the City of Calgary and also other consultants as well. And I'm thrilled to be here and to share some of the exciting things that we have accomplished collectively in this region. As I said, I'm a solution provider and innovative technology creator. But in the end, it's also something that I want to acknowledge that the city and others have supported that effort. So innovation can't happen unless there is a receptive environment in which that innovation can be applied. So I want to express gratitude to the City of Calgary for being that innovative receptacle. And any of you out there who are with, approvals agencies within municipalities, there is a need for you to be truly receptive to innovation, or else you will never be changing the way you address your problems and moving forward. So I would really encourage you to do that, and I look forward to showing you some examples of successful innovation in Calgary. So thank you very much, Graham. I'll hand it back to you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Corey. Yeah, we're going to later on, John's going to play some video clips that I was fortunate enough to film with Corey a couple of weeks ago in the Calgary region on sustainable stormwater solutions. Also, I have Reid Frocklage with the City of Calgary. He's a public program coordinator and has also got a great background. You'll hear a little bit in some of the video clips working prior to that with a nonprofit called Riverwatch Alberta Institute. I think I've got that right, Reed. But if you want to jump in and say hi, I see you. I think I see you there in the background that you've joined. So.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks for the invite here, Graham. Yeah, I've got I spent 9 years working with a nonprofit before I joined the City of Calgary. In those 9 years, I was working with the nonprofit's called Riverwatch. And I started up a stormwater monitoring program called Creek Watch, looking at these creeks as kind of our dirty little secret where all the stormwater was going to, and we were trying to monitor water quality at the city limits as well as the confluence with wherever the creek was going, which usually was the Bow or the Elbow rivers. And trying to help monitor that water quality and identify the differences between the two different locations. And through the Creek Watch program, we encountered quite a bit of pollution and releases, I guess they would call them there. And so that it was interesting kind of going from identifying a release all the way through to cleanup and initiating a cleanup to help get rid of some of the plastics. We were usually dealing with a lot of plastics on our end. But yeah, I'm a public program coordinator. My focus at the city is on kind of our riparian areas and trying to keep our riparian areas healthy and making people aware of the value of these areas. So thanks for the invite, Grant.
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks so much, Reed. Looking forward to seeing some of your videos. Really love hearing your storytelling, which I think is really important from the perspective of managing stormwater and sustainability. So, John, let's jump to the next slide, I think, if you're able to. Wonderful. So in Alberta and the other Canadian provinces, we do what's called a land acknowledgement, which a lot of you might be familiar with. As I mentioned, for those of you joining, I'm actually out here in British Columbia today in a town called Invermere, here in the Rockies, and I think I'm in the heart of what's called the Tunaha. It's the Flathead region and the Shuswap. That's a large area of indigenous population that runs all the way down through Montana and Idaho, and quite an extensive area. The City of Calgary is located in what we call Treaty 7 region of Alberta. And it was a treaty that was made with the Crown back in the 19th century. A lot of Alberta and Saskatchewan is covered by these treaties. Our treaty area includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, which is comprised of the Siksika, Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations. And also right next door to us in Calgary, we have the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nations. And the City of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, District 5 and 6. Also on Monday here, we have a beautiful day that's been happening for the last few years. It's called Truth and Reconciliation Day. And it's just when we pause to think about the harms done to Indigenous people. So that's really important, and I think we have a lot to learn from Indigenous culture about sustainability. So hopefully we can work together. Next slide, please, John. And another one, maybe. There's a short video here that John's going to play. This is the Bow River. That is our main river that flows through Calgary. This video didn't quite do it justice because the water is a much more turquoise color, but it got a little bit washed out here. But that was me. I was out cycling with some friends from work actually a couple of weekends ago. It was a little bit of a cool rainy day, but we sit downstream in Calgary, just east of the eastern slopes of the Rockies. So we're pretty blessed to have a beautiful river. It's fed by the Bow Glacier up in the Icefields Parkway up towards Jasper, which had a awful wildfire come through part of the town this year, as you probably heard. And we have a lot of challenges like other places. Our river is quite glacial fed, and with the retreat of glaciers and increasing droughts, we definitely face a lot of challenges, as well as with invasive species and all kinds of other issues. Next slide there, please, John. And so this is just a quick map of our watershed. Like I said, Calgary is located in the Bow River Basin, which is a sub-watershed of the Saskatchewan River system. Up north of us, about 3 hours drive in Edmonton, they have a river flows through the city called the North Saskatchewan, and those rivers meet up a little bit north of Saskatoon. And I think it's where we had some folks from Saskatoon joining us today, and it's one of my favorite places to visit in the summer, and head north up to Lake Country, do a little bit of cycling out there. Anyways, the Saskatchewan River system feeds through some lakes and then down the Nelson River out to Hudson Bay. So where we're sitting in Calgary is a long way from Hudson Bay, but we can definitely have a lot of impacts between Calgary and our downstream neighbors. So it's also something that we're mindful of. Next slide, please, John. So some of the sites that we're going to look at today, starting over here on the right-hand side of the slide, there's a city. It used to be the town of Chestermere. It's grown quite a lot. We have a lot of population growth and development in the region. And the city of Chestermere, Corey's going to have a video from there about stormwater management. Next, over here towards the top right, Reed's going to talk a little bit about our bioengineering demonstration project. At the top, there is a park that's called Dale Hodges Park. We have a little video at the end if we have time. Corey will probably talk about that project. It was a great example of turning an old gravel pit into sustainable stormwater management and a whole ecosystem project. I just also added there a couple of our water supply, our drinking water supplies are Bearspaw Reservoir and Glenmore Reservoir. We went through a crazy summer of huge water restrictions in Calgary because our main water supply for drinking water from Bearspaw we had a big feeder main, a large pressurized water pipe that had a massive failure, and that resulted in some degree of generally extreme water restrictions through the summer. So I'm hoping it helps to get people thinking about sustainability and how these things are finite. Next slide, please, John. And as some of you might have heard, or if you're in the region, Calgary does experience large floods. The two types of flooding that we have are river flooding. Being located so close to the Rockies in the foothills, I think also with climate change, we're more and more likely to see these rain on snow events where in the spring months, and even in some of the winter months, we have heavy rain that's falling on snow. And that's what happened with this event that affected a large part of southern Alberta, not just Calgary, back in 2013, so just over 10 years ago. Just in the foreground, if you're wondering what that sort of circular area is, that's actually the Calgary Stampede grounds. If any of you have been to the Stampede, it's a fun 10 days every July. And this was less than a month before the Stampede. Of course, the Stampede, with their mentality, they came up with this sort of metaphor or slogan, come hell or high water. And they somehow managed to get the Stampede and the whole area back into the ability to run the Stampede. There's some train tracks where our transit system run. You can see here, just right of the trackway there, that's the Elbow River. That's one of our smaller rivers that's a tributary of the Bow River in Calgary, and it completely flooded out the area. It took out some of the train tracks. They were it was completely buckled steel. It was just a mess. And the Calgary sort of mentality, they had everything up and running. But we are prone to these floods, probably increasingly so. A lot of citizens were just not aware. We hadn't had flooding like that since the 1930s. And then we had a significant flood in 2005, and then 2013 was even worse. We are also prone to pluvial flooding, so flooding caused by rainfall and overland runoff. So next slide, please, John. I had put this slide up the other day in my presentation, but I think it's just a really good illustration. This is from the Insurance Bureau of Canada. that tracks insurance claims. So if you wanted to look at it from an economic perspective, we had this huge spike in insurance claims that were weather or natural disaster related this year. A couple of the big events happened in Alberta, including the Jasper wildfire I mentioned. Also last month in Calgary, we had a crazy hailstorm in the north part of the city, sort of a golf ball to tennis ball size hail that did a huge amount of damage to homes and cars, and also resulted in quite a bit of localized flooding. So overall, in the last couple of decades, we've been seeing a trend, of course, economically too, with just these increasing insurance claims. And I think actually of the 10 most costly natural disasters in Canada, I think all of those happened since 2016. And 5 of those out of the 10 were in the province of Alberta. The Fort McMurray wildfire a few years ago was another example. So it's something that's an increasing challenge in terms of building resiliency and trying to be proactive and manage these things. Next slide, please, John. So as far as the City of Calgary goes, I'm not going to speak too much to it, but one thing that was really cool, that it took a long time to develop, but last year we released our stormwater management strategy. I don't think the links will work here in the video, but if you go to calgary.ca and search up stormwater management strategy, if you're interested to take a look, I really love this strategy because it's a much more holistic approach to managing stormwater that doesn't just think economically and socially. It builds the whole socio-ecological and other important approaches in that Corey and Reed, are going to address a little bit. A lot of the work I do in my day-to-day job is a little bit more sort of top-down approach of using the what we call the Calgary Stormwater Bylaw. So that's basically our ordinance that we use to some degree to just make people aware of what the requirements are. We also work with our partners provincially with what we call Alberta Environment and Protected Areas. So they're like our provincial sort of EPA. And then we work quite a bit with the federal government too. They have a couple of departments, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and also Environment and Climate Change Canada has regulations and acts that are very similar to U.S. acts if you're in the U.S., like the Clean Water Act, for example. So it really is. There's a lot of similarities in the regulatory environment. Next slide, please, Corey. Or sorry, John. John, I was just going to mention real quickly about one challenge in the Calgary area has been getting effective stormwater reuse in place. And through various rules and bureaucracy, it's often been a headache for folks. And I just real quickly wanted to put up this example of a facility I worked with. In this aerial imagery here, you can see this large facility. It's very impervious, and it looks like what's going on here. It's actually a ready-mix, concrete ready-mix facility that produces enormous quantities of ready-mix concrete. And as of about 10 years ago, we had discovered this facility at the time being connected to the city stormwater system through our underground stormwater pipes. As much as they had tried on site to manage the slurry, over here is their batch plant at the sort of top of the photo there. And the ready mix trucks come in, and they have, as you've probably seen, they have these kind of enviro buckets or chutes on the back. And what they do here is they back up the trucks. I think you can see one here, and they wash off the chutes back into the batch plant where it's reclaimed water, basically. But you can see here a lot of the trucks would come in, and if it was busy, they would just wash out in the yard. Lo and behold, there's access right directly in the yard to the stormwater system. Long story short, we discovered we had about an 8-foot diameter storm trunk that was almost 80-90% full of material. We didn't know what it was at first. And then we looked across the street, across this valley here. Lo and behold, here's this ready-mix facility. They really got on board with working with the city, and got a consultant on board, and it took several years, but they now actually have this pond here. It's basically an evaporation pond. You can see it's got that kind of turquoise color, sort of similar to concrete wash off. And they now collect all of their runoff from the entire facility. It drains into this pond, and they finally, after years of trying, they were able to get approval from the province of Alberta to. They have a basically pressurized line that runs this water over to their batch plant, and they've also had a significant cost saving because you can imagine the amount of potable water they were using. They've been able to significantly reduce that. So that's a cool little story, I think. It was so awesome to get out there and see this pond, and know that they've completely separated themselves from the surrounding environment in terms of any runoff with contaminants. Next slide. And sorry, go ahead, John.
No, I just wanted to kind of build on what you were saying there. It sounds like from your review of recent history that maybe things are changing again. Are you seeing perhaps climate change affecting the city of Calgary as far as higher water levels now in the rivers, more flooding? How is that impacting your program?
Yeah, well, definitely. I think across Canada, we're seeing climate change impacts at a far larger sort of impact rate than a lot of other parts of the world. And I think a good example. It doesn't quite tie to climate change, but was with the summer-long water restrictions we had due to the infrastructure failure. Interestingly, just prior to that, there had been several months. I think Reed on the call here was even involved in a lot of discussion and plans to implement mandatory water restrictions because we had a multi-year drought and we were really running out of water, especially considering our growing population. And yeah, so that's just one challenge as well. Invasive species, we've got diseases, for example, like whirling disease, which has been it's a disease that causes just a really awful mortality in our local fish populations. And as Reed will probably tell you, the Bow River is a world-class trout fishing destination for a lot of people. So yeah, like drought, increasing intensity of rain events is another problem. That hailstorm that I mentioned, potential for wildfire, and even the potential for wildfire upstream, as probably a lot of you have experienced, to impact water quality downstream, and how these chemicals that show up from fires, be they natural or synthetic. Yeah, so
right. Okay, and then we do have a question here from Mel. Before we get too far away from your concrete, do you want to answer that? Let's read it first. The concrete facility pond does not look large enough to collect all runoff, which may be surprising, mostly because they must have a lot of waste concrete washout water as well. Does the pond only collect runoff, or is it combined?
Well, their concrete washout from their ready-mix trucks, they have gotten much better at managing that to put it straight into the reclaimer system at the batch plant. I believe the pond is designed for like a 100-year, 24-hour event, which in the grand scheme of things, they could run out of storage. They do actually have a large gravel pit facility that they prior to building the pond, and with them being cut off from the stormwater system, they were hauling a heck of a lot of water over to the gravel pit, which was not ideal. But yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it depends too on the economy and the production of concrete. It's been only operational for just a little bit over a year, so I would have to follow up. Certainly there was a lot of design put into the pond volume, but yeah, we would not want it to get to the state where it was overflowing down into that valley there for sure.
Okay.
That's not really a great answer, but that's about the best I can do for that one. Thanks, Mel.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you have what we see many times is you have these older facilities that were not designed to today's standards,
Yeah,
and
for
that
sure.
very well is maybe the case there.
Yeah, and part of the challenge here too is a jurisdictional thing, right? Because under our what I called our stormwater bylaw that I had on the slide there, we can step in under our city jurisdiction and manage things under the stormwater bylaw, but there really needs to be a connection into the stormwater system. And that's why we were involved earlier. That connection is now gone. That pipe was like completely plugged and removed, and so they no longer have any access to the stormwater system. So then it becomes an effort to try to work with the province of Alberta under what they call the Water Act and the Environmental Protection and Enhancement Act, a couple of key pieces of legislation here in Alberta to manage that and the whole question of water reuse. So there's a lot of moving parts there.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. All right.
Yep.
You ready to move on to the next?
Yeah, I'm going to jump through the next section just real quick. I didn't start with the greatest photo here, but we do have our stormwater pollution prevention program here in the city of Calgary actually started with about a 20 plus year of effort to build an erosion and sediment control program. Now, that's a little bit of a difference when you compare, for example, what's happening in the US with under the construction general permit and at the state level with SWIPs, like construction type SWIPs. We are still very much focused on erosion and sediment control, just that sediment, as you can see there, running off this really poorly managed facility onto a city street and ultimately down into a drop inlet and into the storm system. We do have a large program where we have literally hundreds of files. We have a small team that reviews the SWIP, the erosion sediment control type SWIPs. And then we have another group of inspectors that goes out and inspects these things. A lot of the challenges, though, come down to ensuring our development authority in the city puts requirements in things like development permits that, you must develop and implement an erosion sediment control plan or a SWIP, and you must update it from time to time. But yeah, we have had some really good success. This is not a great example. Sometimes with these smaller sites, we base part of our requirements on the size of the disturbance area. So I would have assumed this facility, this multifamily, would have required a plan, but they most likely have a plan that's been developed by a consultant, but they're not implementing it. So we spend quite a bit of time doing education and enforcement under our stormwater bylaw for this type of situation. As probably all of you are familiar with, mud track out even. Our plans require all these Russell, like soil loss calculations. But really, when it comes down to it, a lot of problems happen at the home building stage. And as you can see in this case, with just poor management within and around the perimeter of the site. You can jump to the next slide, John. Here's an example. A contractor for the city actually was kind enough to snap some drone video for us at a city project. This one was quite complex and was a little bit of a regulatory challenge where we spent a lot of time and effort with the project engineer, the project manager with the city, as well as their consultant team and contractor. The image is not taken at the best time of year. It's in the early spring in Calgary when everything looks brown. So you might be thinking you're looking at a lot of bare ground there, but a lot of it actually has a significant vegetation cover. But nonetheless, you can see this little creek. It's called West Nose Creek running through the center of the photo here. And so we had some significant challenges, and you can still see if you've got an erosion sediment control background, there's a silt fence, for example, placed along not quite the mid slope, but the lower slope here. So what, issues with no storage, it's not an effective place to put silt fence. So we really spent a lot of effort trying to get them to control these critical areas with a pretty good degree of success, but it took a lot of site meetings, and we actually ended up having the federal government, Environment and Climate Change Canada involved. They came out to site, guys in uniform, with large $1 million+ a day fines. So that really got action happening fast. Over here is a little bit of, I think I had a photo the other day that was more of a close-up, but there's some erosion control blanket and hydroseeding. But with these types of linear projects, and this creek was actually realigned in order to build this bridge. As a lot of you are probably familiar with transportation projects like this, where you've got bridge abutments. I mean, this should have been identified in the plan right from the get-go that this was a critical area that needed to be highly managed from a SWIP point of view.
Yeah, and Graham, I wanted to ask you, in interviewing you and talking about your program, what I learned that I think maybe many folks from the United States may not realize is that a lot of the impetus for the stormwater management in Canada falls locally on, for example, City of Calgary. From what I understand,
absolutely.
You don't have like a provincial or what we'd call a state construction general permit. You're required to develop your own ordinances and do your own implementation and own enforcement. Is that correct? How does it work?
Yeah, that's correct, John. We don't have a construction general permit or an industrial general permit. We rely largely on our provincial and federal regulatory partners to come out and do joint inspections with us or enforce their requirements. But like everyone, they're short-staffed and busy with other stuff, and it becomes a challenge for large cities because they tend to pull their resources. As you're probably aware, we have a huge oil and gas industry here in Alberta, and so a lot of focus might go out to those rural oil and gas areas, for example. So we've had some pretty good success with engaging provincial and federal partners, but it often means a phone call. And one thing, of course, that we've really had to, and why our program exists, is because they focus a lot of their efforts on end of pipe discharge, and they put all of the pressure on like implementing source control. I shouldn't say all of it, but a lot of that, like you said, falls to the municipalities. So in the case of the example, this is a municipal, it's a City of Calgary project. So the onus obviously does fall on the city there. But when it comes to dealing with private projects, and we have sort of like a municipal separate storm water system, if there's an end of pipe and outfall of the river, there's a lot of pressure on the city to meet those end of pipe requirements, even if the problems are being caused by a third party. So yeah, definitely a lot of challenges. And I do love a lot of aspects of the Clean Water Act and the permits in the US for that reason. And I'm always a little bit jealous. I'm like, I wish we could do that here.
It puts a lot of weight on your shoulders. You locally are having to create your own basically regulations or municipal code and do your own enforcement. And so that puts a lot of weight on your shoulders. I do have a comment. Go ahead.
If you jump to the next slide, John, and then I think Mel had a question or a comment.
Yeah, about the silt fence. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, just real quickly, the challenge I had with this silt fence here is it's placed mid-slope and it's a steep bridge abutment slope. So if you think of the silt fence as sort of a vertical barrier, all of that runoff, including what's generated as they built the bridge and the road system, comes potentially pouring down the slope. It was at the time it was fairly poorly controlled at the top, and as they continued to build the roadway, I got really concerned about that generating concentrated runoff. And the fence, just where it's located, does if you're installing silt fence, I think the best practice is to, instead of right at the toe of the slope or mid slope, is to have maybe a couple of meters, like 6 feet or whatever of a flatter area. And then with your J hooks and such to ensure good water storage. And also, I think what you see here is it's a kind of a lot of the eggs in the one basket kind of approach of relying on sediment control and not doing effective source control, which means managing runoff and of course, putting in your erosion control practices. So that was kind of my comment on the silt fence there. And so just real quickly, I think this is my last slide, and then we'll jump to the fun stuff here. This is just a map of part of the city of Calgary. And so prior to COVID, we used to actually do everything through paper, like entirely, the whole plan, not even just the site drawings, just everything was on paper. And because of COVID, we had to pivot and move to a digital world. So my colleague Parker actually built a system here. We also use it in our industrial, commercial, institutional stormwater pollution prevention now. We just got that completed this past spring and summer. And so it's an entire continuum from plans coming in, reviews, and all of these sort of brown, multicolored areas you see around the periphery of the city. Those are all active developments with erosion sediment control plans. The little black dots are all like inspection locations. This image is a few months old, but we've built this continuum. It's really awesome. It's allowing us to do our work much more efficiently. It's also saved probably a lot of trees because not everything needs to be on paper. I think the site drawings and stuff, as long as they're readable and, the map and stuff should still be on paper. But I'm going to jump into the next section here because the time always flies by and I'll start rambling, So it'd be great to hear a little bit from Corey and Reed.
All right. Do you want to play this video?
Yeah, go for it. This is Corey. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the video?
Sure, I'm happy to. Thank you very much. This is a nature-based water treatment system where we have a number of objectives that we're trying to achieve all in the same facility. Storage of water is the principal objective. However, we also create a park environment, and what you see in the foreground there is a highly engineered facility called the Nautilus Pond, and its intention is to actually protect the remainder of the facility from sediment and trash and allow for a transition between the high intensity, high energy inflow water and the more sensitive environment where we need to have gentle inflow into there. So by doing all of these things, we're able to create an environment where it's predominantly natural area or a naturalized area. And because it's all naturalized, it's excellent at extracting nutrients from the water. We recirculate that water with very low horsepower pumps, only 5 horsepower, 2 to 5 horsepower pumps to do this. And we design these facilities to considerably exceed the statutory requirements of removing sediment and other things because the statutory objectives were never intended to allow for nature-based systems to exist. Nature-based systems require much greater performance, and therefore we are designing what we know the nature-based systems need or require in terms of sediment removal and energy control and all that. So we're very pleased with the outcomes. This is an incredibly vibrant space, enormous amounts of waterfowl, birds, other creatures around there, and it has become a jewel in that community as well. So not sure, I mean, I could talk for hours about this, and you can see in the video imagery, a considerable amount of greenery everywhere around there. And yeah, the space behind me, the backdrop here, is another one of the facilities that we designed. And this is one of the facilities that Graham brought up in the map earlier. This is called Dale Hodges Park, and it's become a jewel in the community, and one in which it won the top landscape architecture award in Canada in 2021. So I'm honored to be here and speak. Not sure what else I can say besides, nature-based solutions are truly what I would consider the way forward for stormwater. They're not as difficult and scary as some people would project onto them.
John, did you want to jump ahead just maybe halfway through the video there, and we can. I love this system because it goes from the Nautilus pond through this like natural system of here we go, of constructed wetland and I think what you call vertical sand biofilters, Corey,
Mm-hmm.
to polish the water, which is I think you said you can get the water to like irrigation quality standards consistently.
Yeah, very consistently without any mechanical treatment of any kind. All we do is recirculate water through these biofiltration elements, and it comes out at considerable flows, meaning, I think we're about 300 GPM continuous flow, which is irrigation quality water. And that allows us to manage all of the runoff from this development area, which is about close to 200 acres of land in this development area that the pond services. We can manage all that water through these biofiltration elements and turn it into irrigation water for community support.
I also love, Corey, what you've created with these projects that you call stormwater parks, in bringing the public through on pathways and with really well thought out signage that's simple to understand and conveys a message through pictures. And of course, then you've got the backdrop of the system functioning with water flowing through it. I really love the part at the end of this video where the water returns through this whole system of treatment cells and biofilters. The clean water goes back through a manhole structure, and it can recirculate back to the Nautilus pond you saw at the start. And
yeah, that's right. In fact,
cleans up so much.
Every drop of water on the facility, every bit of standing water that you can see is part of a recirculation loop. So it's all turned over through the recirculation environment. And I see somebody put in the comments, what is the maintenance budget per year for the Nautilus Park feature? It's remarkably low. The Nautilus part is essentially allowing for you to produce a more of a mature kind of utility approach to managing sediment, which means rather than having sediment collect in a big pond, for 20 years or 30 years, and then having a massive cleanup effort eventually when the pond becomes unusable. We actually create this space so that it's very easy to maintain and dewater and isolate it, so that it takes a matter of hours to remove whatever sediment has accumulated in 1 year. And therefore you have, very low cost isolation. But, we allow for that to happen every year. What is the maintenance budget? Oh, it would be in the, in the thousands of dollars rather than tens of thousands or more per year. There's virtually no maintenance in the nature-based systems area. We do not mow the grasses. It's intended to be naturalized space, and all we do is recirculate water through that space, and the electrical requirements are measured in hundreds of dollars per year rather than thousands or tens of thousands or anything like that, and yet we're able to produce irrigation quality water without any further disinfection or any other thing. So incredibly low cost to operate these facilities, even though they look this
And while you're doing that, Corey, I was also going to mention what's really cool is the reduction in total loadings of pollutants. There's another pond that Corey and his team designed that's similar in the southeast part of Calgary that collects runoff from a huge industrial area. And it's just incredible, even visually, to see the amount of plastics, sediment, other material. It's even been effective at capturing a couple of motor oil spills that we spend quite a bit of time this summer following upstream and working with automotive businesses. That wasn't the intention of the pond primarily, but nonetheless, when you think back prior to that pond existing, it like that, all that material was going directly into the Bow River in that case.
Yeah, Graham, just as you say, it's very very effective at removing materials. Since we designed this to be far more effective at removing materials than the statutory requirements demand, it is removing things that people didn't even realize were part of the runoff, because it just was never designed to capture those things. So if anything, we are highlighting kind of gaps in the knowledge of how much material comes off catchments. And the maintenance groups that go in and maintain these things, the actual contractors, very clearly state that these are the simplest or the easiest ponds they've ever worked with to remove materials. The only complaints that we sometimes have is from people who run the maintenance operations, who say, we have to clean these things, and there's way more material here than we thought was going to be the case. And so that's just a sign that it's working. If it wasn't
Absolutely.
being removed, it would just be going straight into the river. So I'm not too sorry about excellent performance. It's really overachieving performance from a removal perspective.
For sure. Thanks so much, Corey. I see, John, you've got the video ready to roll here. So let's maybe This is me riding my bike, by the way, to go meet Reed down at the what we call the bioengineering demonstration and education project. A little noisy. The train is rolling through in the background here. This is actually down at Confluence Park. It used to be called Fort Calgary. It's at the confluence of the Bow and the Elbow River, which was a gathering place through thousands of years. Here you see the Bow River, and
it's a flotilla of rafts from Riverwatch, just setting out for the day, going down the river from here at this bioengineering demonstration project. They're headed down towards the Bonnybrook wastewater treatment plant. And this is Reed here.
How are we doing this morning?
We're doing good.
Great.
Reed, do you want to tell us a little bit about this project here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is the bioengineering demonstration education project.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Maybe what we can do, John, if it's possible, we can always send. I just made these videos. They're definitely not professionally made, but if anyone's interested, I can just share the YouTube links with you if anyone wants to follow along.
Sure. In fact, yeah, we'll do that. Sorry, I think we're having a bit of an internet issue this morning.
But maybe Reed. So we were out at this project, and we got talking about a couple of things. One about the bioengineering, like demonstration education site that was developed here following the Calgary flood of 2013, where there was huge damage along. You just started to see it's an outside bend of the river that was like heavily eroded, and it almost took some houses out with it. And in the interim sort of emergency, they dumped huge quantities of super large riprap in there. And then they started to build some groins or redirective measures to redirect the current. But the bank sat there for a few years, just completely washed out. The adjacent pathway, I think the bike path was gone too. But do you want to tell us a little bit, Reed, about how where we got to where you're at today?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the BDEP site, we call it, the Bioengineering Demonstration Education Project. It's a joint initiative between municipal and federal, or municipal and provincial kind of entities there. And again, we're trying to figure out a way to demonstrate different types of soil bioengineering techniques that could be used to not only stabilize eroding banks, but also improve fish habitat. I'm a big fish guy. I came out to I'm here in Calgary because of the Bow River and the beautiful trout population. It's tough seeing a lot of the hard engineering that we typically see, which is just straight riprap or large boulders used to kind of stop the river from encroaching on our man-made infrastructure. And what we've been doing with these bioengineering projects, we have now initiated over 120 of them since 2007. So, you never let a kind of a catastrophic event go to waste. We only had maybe a dozen of them from 2007 to 2013, and with significant erosion, it kind of opened the door up to test a whole bunch of different to not test, but to use a bunch of different techniques all over the city. And these are happening on not only our rivers but our creeks as well. And this BDEP site if you go to calgary.ca/BDEP, it kind of showcases all the different techniques that we use. And it's on a big bend in the river. As Graham mentioned there, the river wanted to carve a new pathway through an old neighborhood because it's a big bend that loops around, comes back, and the river wanted to go straight through naturally. But we got lucky that we didn't do that. We ended up just eroding right to their front steps of these houses. They lost a couple hundred meters of bank, all the old growth trees. But now we're at the phase, so that this project is now 8 years old, maybe 7 or 8 years old, and the vegetation's all established. All the techniques seem to be doing really well. We've been monitoring it every year, and we're at the point right now where I'm leading tours and helping arrange to showcase this to practitioners. How can you improve the use of your soil bioengineering within the work that you're already doing? So that's we're at a really interesting spot right now. The site itself is beautiful. It's doing really well. We had to protect it from beavers for the first 5 years, and we really don't want the whole site getting wiped out. And everything's now fully established. There's lots of natural growth, and we're just in the maintenance phase right now. So it's doing really well. And again,
Rita,
it looks a lot nicer.
Sorry, Reed, I loved also what you said when we were down on site the other day about the bank swallow habitat, which is kind of a challenge within itself, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. So on top of that, like I'm a riparian guy here at Calgary at the city. And, a project we've been working on as well is looking at bank swallow monitoring. And actually right behind me here, this is on the the Elbow River up in a Weaselhead area. It's called, and they're one of the largest bank swallow colonies in Calgary is in this stretch. And their populations have plummeted 98% in the last 40 years across North America. It's not just here in Calgary. And we're trying to figure out that balance between, avian infrastructure and human infrastructure, because humans, we don't like the word erosion, but we've actually within the BDEP site, we've intentionally left bare bank that kind of looks, this isn't the site, but like it's sheer cliffs. Bank swallows need to be able to swoop down and up and into their burrows. And now we've actually just initiated a whole new stretch of river. It was a fish habitat compensation project, but it also doubled to improve the access for bank swallows. So it's kind of an interesting step, and we're really, really focusing on these natural habitats.
That's really cool. I just wanted to say in the last 30 seconds too that Reid, I don't know if he knows it or not, but he was instrumental in the formation of our industrial, commercial, institutional stormwater pollution prevention program, because he was one of the folks that discovered when I think he was with Riverwatch, running trips down the river to educate the school kids in various generations, discovered these little microplastic pellets that were showing up. And long story short, he did some further work and said, these are coming out of a storm outfall. So we subsequently did quite a lot of work. It actually made the media, it was in the news quite a bit. And we were able to identify through our mapping and looking at businesses, plastics facilities that, were just poorly managing their plastic pellets and resins and so on. We have a pretty large plastics industry, and we did a lot of work with them subsequently. There's a local nonprofit that's an industry group that also did a lot of work with the city and Riverwatch and so on. So as it stands today, those plastics facilities were some of the first big industrial facilities to get on board with stormwater pollution prevention. And
right.
So thanks for that, Reid. It's really cool to sort of see it come full circle.
Well, thank you, Graham. We are unfortunately out of time. I have loved this tour of Calgary. Thank you to you, Graham, and Reid, and Corey. And I apologize for some of the technical difficulties we had this morning, but we are going to post those videos on the Stormwater Awareness Week resource page. So if you go to same place where you signed up, we have speaker notes. You can find that, and we'll have links to those videos. They are great videos. I'm hoping everyone will watch them. But I put on the screen your contact information. So if anyone wants to contact Corey about the Nautilus systems, or Reid or Graham about the fascinating programs we've seen, I would invite you to do so. Graham, any quick last thoughts? Just 15 seconds, but then we got to go to our next workshop.
Yeah, 3 thoughts, John. Thanks so much for the amazing program you put on at the grassroots level, and it's clearly been the source of the success. Just answering Mel's question, know that those plastic manufacturers don't have any kind of environmental permit, unfortunately. We would like to get them there. And I just wanted to say a huge thanks to Reid and to Corey for joining us today. And come and visit us in Calgary. We'd love to have you look us up, and we'll take you for a stormwater tour.
All right, I want to do that. I will be there. All right, well, thank you to all you who attended today, and we'll see you at one of the next workshops.